5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to Space Engineers on the Xbox, on the Series X. And this is Warfare 2 Broadside, the free update showcase. Quick look at it. What did we get? We got an absolute ton of stuff. Warfare 2 Broadside is probably the biggest update that Keen Software have put out yet. We got new weapon blocks, the artillery turret, the railgun, the assault cannon, the autocannon, and a lot more. I'm going to be looking at stuff like that. A lot of quality of life changes, including, finally, target locking. We don't have missiles that can track yet, but we do have target locking and a leading edge reticle. There's also been an update to the mod API. If you watched the dev stream prior to Warfare 2 Broadside, you'd have seen what that entailed. If not, I'm going to leave relevant links in the description of this video, so don't worry about that. What else did we get? Well, we got gas tank detonations, we got armor penetration, and more stuff. They did add a premium content DLC, which I do recommend buying. It's fantastic. There's some brilliant decorative blocks in there. I'll be doing a separate showcase on that, as I always do. And we also, with this, got my favourite block ever. And this is where we're starting. Now, you've seen my tutorials on this, and if you haven't, then it's worth going through. You can now make your own custom turrets really easily. No need anymore for gyros, remote control blocks, or anything like that. We have the custom turret controller, both small and large grid. That one there is a small grid custom turret controller, sitting pretty inside its armoured shell. We'll come over here to my testing facility, and this will all come clear over time during this video. There's a lot to go through. But to begin with, this is it, your custom turret controller block. This comes into your same area on the build menu. You pop it open, scroll through until you get to your advanced systems, and you'll see your programmable block. Right at the end now is a custom turret controller. And this is what you need to be able to control your turrets, and also to allow the AI to take over. Now, there's no idle animation with the custom turret controller. But how does it work? Well, I've gone through this before, but I'll do a quick demonstration just because. So, start off, you'll need two things to make a simple turret with the custom turret controller. You're going to need a rotor. If this is survival, you're going to need an advanced rotor. And if you want to build it on the small grid style, you're going to need to take off that rotor head and add a small rotor. But we won't be messing with any of that. We're just going to do a big kind of turret thing, just as a demonstration. So what we want now is we want to grab this advanced rotor, and we want to call it AZ for azimuth. This is our rotational rotor, an azimuth rotor. Next thing you want to do is pop open your build again. You want to snap a hinge, and if you remember with hinges, that marker there indicates the lower part, the lower angle. And then you want, just because this is a dead simple custom turret controller for this video, we want a rocket launcher, and we're going to pop out just because it's large grid, let's stick a artillery cannon on it for the hell of it. And on the bottom of the artillery cannon, just for the hell of it, we're going to put a block. Pop a slopey block, and then going to go back to our advanced systems. We're going to go to our remote control. We're going to look at camera, and if you look, the dot on the camera tells you where the bottom of the camera is. Especially on a large grid, you can't see the words camera. So always use the dot at the bottom. So we're going to make that like that. Now, normally I'd suggest you rename this hinge elevation or hinge EL. But for the purposes of this, we're not going to bother because we know there's only one hinge on this grid. Next, we're going into the custom turret controller. And we're going to come down here. And what we want to look at are these settings here. The azimuth rotor, well, we already know that's azimuth. The hinge is the only hinge for elevation. And there's a camera on the grid. We're going to push up the velocity multiplier and the elevation. We're going to leave the angle deviation alone. And we're going to select the artillery. And we're going to add it to our tools and weapons. And that is all we need, apart from maybe pushing on Enable AI and popping the radius up to 800 meters. And you can change whether it targets and whether it's got target locking. You can also change its target default to weapons, propulsion, and power systems. That's another quality of life change that rolled in with Warfare 2 Broadside. What you really want to do is follow the link in this video when I put it up there. I'm going to link to all the patch notes that have been out so far. There's over 200 plus quality of life changes. There are some issues with the Warfare 2 Broadside update as well. Keen are fixing those. They've already fixed some, but there's still a bunch to fix. But I'll also link to Marek's blog, which goes over a lot of this in great detail, and also to the new combat changes on the Space Engineers site, because it would take me a while to go through that lot. I can tell you there's a lot of stuff, and I prefer people just to take their time, have a look at it while I go through and just give you a demonstration of various things. So we're going to pop this custom turret controller onto our grid, and we're going to choose control. I've done this in the past with various things. Once again, though, if you've never seen it before, hold down the direction on the D-pad and you'll pop open the toolbar config, and then just choose the custom turret controller with A and then select control. Now, when we hit control, we'll get a camera view. There's our, it'll bounce around a bit, so what we might want to do is just, for the purposes of this particular grid, just drop on share inertia tensor. To have that appear, you've got to be in experimental mode as well, and that can only be set from the main menu. I have new player guides, covers all this. Just pop through onto my playlists, take a nose if you're new. If you know all this, well, you know all this. Anyway, back to this. You'll see that's much smoother now. And we have an artillery cannon on top of a custom turret with no need to mess around with rotors and remote control blocks and so on and so forth. And we can open fire quite easily. So that is the custom turret controller block. Comes in large and small grid, and it's a brilliant block. And then with this update, we got an absolute slew of free things that were added. Weapons were the most important part. If we tootle over to my base, you'll see I've popped a few things here and there. All weapons now have an effective range. The maximum range of this small grid autocannon turret, which is perfect for the kind of under-ship deck sweeper style guns that you get in Star Wars. That's 800 meters. We have an assault cannon at 1,400 meters. And then we have an autocannon at 800, a railgun at 1,400, and the assault cannon here at the top. And the autocannon is very useful to put on fighters. These are all part of the Warfare 2 Broadside update, free. No need to pay for anything. Keen don't do pay to win in that regard at all. The DLCs are very reasonably priced. I paid just under £4 for Warfare 2 Broadside at launch, and I'm entirely happy with it. And we also got a different kind of passenger seat. That's the regular, and this is the offset for small grid. So you can have the small grid offset passenger seats and make little troop transports or passenger vessels. Very cool. We also got the large grid artillery turret and the large grid assault cannon turret. Now, these also have cameras built in. So if you take them onto a grid and you attach them to a control seat, let's have a look. Block weapons. Not block weapons, sorry. All blocks. 2 assault cannon turrets, 1. Let's go for the artillery turret. And we hit control. These are slow moving. Remember, an artillery turret is not meant to track fighters. These things are slow and ponderous. And we also got the artillery itself. This is perfect to place on a rotor or hinge system to give it elevation. Because as part of the free update, the quality of life changes, we now have bullet drop. Projectile trajectory is a thing in Space Engineers. Bullets do lose kinetic force over time, and they do curve and drop. So once they go past their effective range, they start to lose that range and they will drop and hit the ground. Let me see, what else have we got? Well, as I said, we've got these custom turrets. This one is better than the one over there. This is a small grid version, and you can actually control this. Now, ignore this door. I'll be talking about this door when we come to the DLC, and this will also be discussed as part of the DLC. But as you can see, I can control my turret on the roof from this. And it's pretty fast tracking because I have the azimuth and elevation set to high. Let's move on. So you've seen all that. You've seen all that. What else is part of Warfare 2? Well, there's one weapon we haven't really mentioned, and it is the railgun. That's right, we've got small grid and large grid railguns. You can see the railgun here. And these things take a lot of power to fire. Like so. And if you don't have enough power, you will redline your grid. We also gained a new Custom Star Asteroid Armory, which shows all of these weapons off. You can actually play it as a scenario if you want. Fight red versus blue, which is a lot of fun. Turn that off. And it also features rebuilds of the red and the blue ship from the red ship map, and they are absolutely stunning. The great thing about this, though, is that what you've got with this is a way to see how all this new content fits together and how they're approaching ship design since the inception of the red ship and the blue ship. Pretty incredible changes, and cosmetically they look so much better. There's a lot of stuff with this update as well going on under the hood. I wanted to touch on a few things that come to mind. I've mentioned that we have bullet drop. We also now have armor penetration, and railguns are the perfect example of this. Say hello to my railgun test facility. Again, ignore the hatch, and also ignore the other block. We'll talk about this block when I come to talk about the actual DLC itself, but this is a great cosmetic block, the heat exchanger. But we're going to just fire off these two railguns against my testing wall over there, and we're going to redline this grid. And when it redlines, the heat exchangers kick in, and they'll only turn off when there's enough sufficient power on this grid, when the railguns are fully charged. These particular guns take about 60 seconds to recharge. Railguns have a hell of a lot of kick, and they punch holes through armor like this. But don't worry, this is my testing block. What else? Well, we got a bunch of new ammunition to play around with. Now, I've spawned in just a few little bits and pieces here. We have assault cannon shells, artillery shells, and large railguns, sabot, and a bunch of other ammunition which you can find at the assembler when you make your ammo for these weapons in survival. There's also something more destructive. Remember when a bit more our power going. Let's maybe not rocket launch this. Let's go for so remember when you used to shoot out ammo crates and things, anything inside, there was no real issue. The thing would just blow up and it'd deform things like so. If you're storing, like I am, even 200 rounds of NATO lunchbox in a box, my advice, make sure it's somewhere on your ship that isn't going to detonate your entire production facility. Because when this box goes off now, as you'll see in a second, let's just pour some more fire in, there's going to be a bigger explosion. A much bigger, more devastating explosion. This is because Keen have added ammo detonation as part of this. You also notice that where I put down the ammo, loose ammo will explode as well, so watch out for that. Not only does ammunition explode in Warfare 2 broadsides, quality of life changes, something else explodes as well. I've seen people complain bitterly about this, and I understand why it happens. You're storing hydrogen in these containers. If you walk up to this hydrogen tank in survival and you grind it down with your grinder, you are going to touch a spark into that hydrogen and set off a bang in Warfare 2 broadside. That's right, they've added detonation to these tanks. If they take sufficient damage, they will blow up. To demonstrate this, we're going to basically take this battery, this poor battery here, and we're going to transfer it to an NPC that you can use rather than spat as an enemy. Now, the moment this gets transferred, my base will open fire. All weapons, anything that's attached. Artillery cannons. There you go. That's a tank gone. And another one. And another. So, again, when you're designing ships, you're going to have a think now on a warship of how better you can protect that ship from these kind of detonations, because this is part and parcel now of Space Engineers. Hydrogen tanks blow up. In quite a spectacular fashion. Until their target is destroyed, of course, which was the battery. It won't continue to fire because there's no power on the grid anymore. So that is your warning regarding those. Then we're going to talk about the other thing that they added, which is, of course, target locking. I mentioned it earlier. You can probably see from my cockpit, I have no lock target. If I tap the left trigger while in the cockpit, we'll lock on and see it's my large grid. The information on these particular screens, this is a script that they added. You can get onto this script in the cockpit by going to the control panel, go to your industrial cockpit, and there's new settings. One of them is enable target locking. If you don't want this target locking to keep on popping up every 5 seconds, all you need to do is turn it off. It's not useful for, say, an industrial ship or a building ship or welding ship. Static weapons come with a leading reticle. As I said, every target system has a maximum range, and basically once it goes out of maximum range, you're going to lose your target lock. But to actually do this, you come down to your script and you pick targeting info, and that will give you your targeting info, as you can see on the right hand panel. It's very useful, and I'd like to see more vanilla scripts added. There's also a setup action on the cockpit, and they can trigger action based on whether or not they're the target of a lock-on. So when the cockpit detects your lock-on, you can trigger an action, and when it's no longer under threat, you can trigger an action. So, for instance, if you've got a ship with a bunch of decoys that can be launched, you can trigger that decoy launch on a target lock-on. As I mentioned before, there's subsystem targeting and everything. I'm using have I actually got this? Yeah. Maybe not. Ah, yes, there we go. I'd forgotten that I'd made a little charging station on this thing. There we go. So you can see here that I have my target reticle, and we have a couple of weapons which we can add to this ship. So again, we'll pop these open, go to block weapons, choose auto cannon, and now when we pop up, we've got an auto cannon on this little fighter thing. And you can see when I lock a target, it can take a varying amount of time based on distance, size. This one is my light drone. My light drone is basically a fast-moving little lighting drone that tootles around the base at night and lights things up. I could stick guns on it now, but you'll see that this thing has the lock-on information. Again, you can read all about this on the link I'm going to drop in the description, because there is an absolute ton. But basically, it's the faction owner name, the grid name, the distance, your relative velocity, the approach velocity, and the mass in kilograms. Very useful if you want to work out the mass of a grid without getting on board. You can tell that's a station. Lock this drone again. You can, it's 1,000, it's 14,106 kilograms. Wait. See, if we take the target locking off, we lose the information, which is fine for a ship that has no weapon capability. Of course, if you're playing something with a scouting role, you could, in theory, have a small maneuverable cockpit, some thrusters, very fast, and just relay target information to your faction. There we go. That is pretty much a lot of what Broadside 2 does, apart from changes quality of life wise to the decoy. The decoys now have what's called a priority, a signature, when they're targeted. So you can't see it, but it's hidden away under the hood of the engine. They're always a high priority target, which means that basically they're 10 times the value of a single subsystem, such as a thruster, and they decrease in priority with their distance and also with block count. So you should make sure your decoys are as close to the object they're meant to protect. And so if you're trying to protect very large areas or a large number of subsystems, then you deploy a lot more decoys in that area. And one great thing, of course, about decoys is they are still natural lightning rods. So if you're on Pertum or on a planet that likes to blast you with lightning, you can build self-repair decoy towers to help you survive. And you can also pop them onto your ships, and they will protect the ship and vehicles against lightning. Just make sure you build them in a way that the area around them doesn't get too damaged. And I think I've covered the majority of things with this update. You can always look at the tooltips of the weapons and so on and so forth. They will tell you their maximum distance, like the artillery turret being at 2,000 meters. Once it goes beyond 2,000 meters, its max effective range is basically exceeded, and you'll find diminishing returns when you're firing. In fact, you probably won't hit your target easily beyond that range, and you'll certainly lose target locks. And let me think. Yeah, I'm just going to leave the guide to all this. It'll talk about it in far more detail, and it won't bore you with a bunch of statistics and so on. So yeah, that is Warfare 2 Broadside's free update. Huge number of quality of life changes, huge number of patch notes, lots of new content to play around with, lots of weapons, brand new weapons, new ways of building ships to protect against armor penetration and detonation of hydrogen tanks and stored ammunition. That is Warfare 2 Broadside. I'll be back again soon with Warfare 2 Broadside's free update. Part of which is this, the searchlight. If you notice, this searchlight is focused on me. This is because these have AI and they can track you, or they can track ships. But I'll talk about that in greater detail when I do my DLC showcase for Warfare 2 Broadside. Until then, stay safe, have fun, enjoy the game. As I say, happy engineering. There's a lot more to come in 2022 and beyond. Space Engineers is going to evolve and change. Warfare 2 Broadside is just the beginning. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.